These meetings in general are farcical. These are not meetings to gain public opinion. PMSI obviously already has these plans drawn up. They present it to us tonight, not what we think, but what they think we think and want us to think about criminal justice in Monroe County. If they actually cared what we think, we would have something like a public referendum, which they're completely unwilling to do because they know that the average citizens of Monroe County won't stand for this kind of crap.
We now stand alone at the top of a list of industrialized countries with respect to a negative social service, and that is locking up and behaviorally modifying our own citizens. So we have an unacceptable rate of incarceration in this county. There's one thing we can do in this county that can reduce recidivism by 100%, and that is to reduce the number of slots, because it's socially unacceptable, inhumane, and indecent for a liberal county such as Monroe County to lock up the proportion of the population that we're locking up. The statistics that were presented to tonight were self-justifying. They were almost entirely negative. There's almost no input from anybody that's incarcerated. Being a recidivist is not a crime. If one is convicted, then one can say that person was guilty of a crime. Until that occurs, that person has not been guilty of a crime, and it is not a crime to have been convicted, let alone plea bargained guilty to escape this draconian system, which saddles people with everything from work release to years of probation, to lost jobs, to lost families.
And that's the elephant in the room, I think, that I want to address is poverty. This elephant has to be addressed.
As a county, we're being asked to spend an incredible amount of money, make an incredible ideological investment in increasing what happens to people after they've entered. How do the Board of Judges, PMSI, feel confident that we as a community can make a decision about the expansion of the correction system based only on a single-day snapshot of the data?
And the PMSI guys, one of the things they said right off the bat was that these public forums were an opportunity for input from community to develop consensus, if we could, of what the right thing for Monroe County would look like. And then they went through and did their presentation and said, okay, now let's hear from the public and see if we've identified the right stuff. That was quote from them. Well, I've been to these forums, I've listened to the public talk, and I can tell you that we really haven't come to a consensus. I think we've made the wrong assumption that people want a jail. It's not about designing a good jail, it's really, should we have one or not? That should be the discussion of these conversations. I just want to reiterate that we need to look at all of our policies to reduce the number of people in jail, and that we should support people holistically with child care, employment, substance abuse, all of these things, mental health, and really try to reduce a reliance on punitive measures. You know, we built a jail, this new jail was built because the one we have now was built because the old one overcrowded. We are doing nothing that's going to tell me that we're not going to overcrowd this new jail. And it's really disheartening to see in the graphics that you even have planned out where you're going to expand. We shouldn't be planning for expansion. We should be planning for reducing.
Don't work for a company that builds jails. Don't work for anybody who supports this. You know, don't pay into the system. There's no reason to lock people up if they're not hurting people. You know, there's no reason to lock people up for using a plant or being stumbly outside the library or whatever. I mean, it's just because they don't have property to stumble around on. It's ridiculous.
Those costs only apply to the cost of building. They don't apply to the cost of running it at all. But if you can't really afford, if it's not going to be the same money as this giant loan, but you can't really afford to adequately staff the small jail you have with all these increased programs, I mean, you're talking about adding 200 or more beds. How are you going to afford to staff a big jail?
Instead of incarceration, why don't you have programs that's going to help them? psychologically, economically. You know what I'm saying? While I was in prison, I seen a lot of 17, 18, some 16-year-olds who were waved into the prison system. I seen how they were changed from youth to predators, being raped themselves, disregarded, abused. Throwing people into jails, juvenile facilities, is not the answer, because ultimately it's going to change them, it's going to damage them, and many are going to end up into the prison system itself. I also know that companies are going to profit from this juvenile. And these young people are going to get out, and they're going to have no safety net, no support. I'm one person who have witnessed that.
I have misunderstood you, but I thought that you said you described the people in the jail as clientele in the system? I mean, that's odd phrasing for something that isn't supposed to make money. I do find it kind of odd that the size of the jail has to do with a college, a university being around, but I do wonder how many people in the jail right now are enrolled at IU.
What I'm asking is this the best way for the county to make an investment in our safety? Or can we find programs, can we find strategies that cause people to not become incarcerated in the first place, that work with communities that are specifically affected by incarceration and many other factors such as poverty and issues with addiction?